so 8/13/2019. So October 13th, 2019. I was driving home. Right before I got to my house, I got a call from a policeman, and one of my battle buddies, my partner in my unit, had committed suicide. And we had kind of been talking. I'd been telling him all about everything I was going through, trying to get him to go to treatment, trying to do all this stuff, and we thought things were getting better. And I got that call, and it kind of rocked me.
Hey, you know what? I am recording this intro after I did the interview for this guest we have on. I'll tell you, sometimes you go into an interview and you're like, all right, I don't know what we're going to talk about. This guest seems like he's got a decent story, but you kind of think like, all right, I don't really know what I'm going to get out of this interview, and it's in those moments when you come away with some of the best stories that you could possibly draw out, and the best stories that you could find. And that's what happened with this interview we did with Zack Colbert. He went through some tragedy, dealt with some depression, and dealt with some issues with a battle buddy from the Army who passed away from suicide. And he channeled that into something really cool. And he's got a great story about just dealing with PTSD, dealing with emotional trauma. Hey, I'll tell you what, coming out of 2020 with the quarantine and COVID and the anxiety and school shutdown and everything that happened, I'll tell you what, no matter who you are, you can learn something from this about just dealing with that emotional trauma that everybody came out of 2020 with, and probably a lot of us are still dealing with. This was the cool conversation that I came away thinking, wow, man, you never know what you're going to get when you go into it. But Zack's got a cool story and shares some really cool lessons. So stick around. You're going to enjoy this one.
This individuality stuff is a bunch of crap.
There's a reason why.
A master of innovation.
The key to this growing is you.
Any rational person would give up.
I can't disagree with that.
Make sure that we're not prisoners of our own experiences.
You need a team of great people.
Will not tolerate a loser.
What they need is a common vision.
Helping organizations win one veteran at a time. This is the Greencastle Podcast.
Anyway, hey, so Zack, thanks for making time for us today, man. We're really glad to have you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, man. I'm excited about this.
So, we are a podcast supported by a veteran-owned company, sponsored by our company, Greencastle Consulting, which is 100% veteran-owned and operated. So we're always really excited to talk and share veteran stories. Why don't you just give us a quick rundown of how you ended up on our radar, man? I think you have a really cool story I want to dig into today.
So about 2018, 2017, I started, noticing a lot of the effects of PTSD and things like that. And, it had been 17 years in the military, and I just got to a place where like weird things were happening. Like I couldn't read. I just couldn't stay focused for long enough to read an email. So yeah, I started kind of going down treatment and got diagnosed with PTSD and TBI. And
are you still in at this time?
No, well, yeah, I was still in. I was at the very end of my career. And
but just to be clear, you still had 3 years left to go, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, if your experience is like, it's not like you're like, I can just ride it out for 6 months. You're like, I still have 3 long years of experience and things like not being able to read, or stay concentrated for more than a couple minutes.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of the real thing. And I would forget stuff, just the short-term memory was going, and I was starting to kind of freak out a little bit. I was like, man, this is, I was dropping stuff that I knew as a master sergeant in the military. Like, man, I'm not performing at the right level. The therapist was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure, you have TBI. So I went through a bunch of tests. I ended up going to the NICO on Walter Reed, which is the National Intrepid Center of Excellence, which is just awesome.
Yeah.
And while I was in there, Adrian Stamper, who was kind of the head of their art therapy department, really engaged with me, and I made a mask there, and she found out I had a history in art and everything. And their whole art team really worked with me and kind of got me back into wanting to draw. The hard part was that like I have a trimmer, so I shake a little bit and my lines aren't crisp like they were. So I switched to digital media to start. I can go back, and if I have a a squiggly line, I can just overlay it with like a little cheat, point and drag, and it cleans it up. So I started getting back into drawing and doing art, and then I'm going to get the exact date because I'm always horrible with dates. But so 8/13/2019, so October 13th, 2019, I was driving home. Right before I got to my house, I got a call from a policeman, and one of my battle buddies, my partner in my unit, had committed suicide. And we had kind of been talking, I'd been telling him all about everything I was going through, trying to get him to go to treatment, trying to do all this stuff, and we thought things were getting better. And I got that call, and it just kind of rocked me. So I for about 2 weeks, I just didn't know what I was doing. I'd already kind of started drawing what I intended to be a comic. Didn't know where it was going to go, just maybe something about PTSD. And I just was turning into a jerk, really. Like, I just didn't want to deal with anybody, everybody. And I just needed some outlet. So I started drawing. I started drawing him, and with the limited amount of photos I had.
Him being Daniel, your battle buddy who committed suicide.
Yeah. So Daniel Lovell was the one who committed suicide. And so I have a long history with him. I'd spent 10 years with him in the military. I knew his dad before I met him. His dad was like one of the people who did my initial training in the military. So I just had known this family for a long time. We played guitars together. Me and Dan would sit around and listen to his dad's music and critique it and talk about like how, the lyrics and all this stuff, that's what we did on deployments too. Yeah. So it is a really close impact. So I just started drawing.
So let me go back just a second, because I think there's an interesting component to what's already transpired. So you and Daniel Lovell, battle buddies, you guys are thick as thieves. You're going through a bunch of things together. At about 17 years into your career, you're recognizing things like you can't concentrate again, which is interesting. I think we a lot of times, and maybe a lot of us suffer from it. You chalk it up to like, I'm getting older, or you're like, man, I didn't think this kind of thing would hit me so hard. And that's not just for military folks. I think it's for a lot of firefighters, cops, nurses, anybody who's experienced a little bit of trauma, and they don't recognize the signs of PTSD, or just the experience of something traumatic. You just go, I'm in my early 40s. I guess that's just the way it goes. You start forgetting things. You're like, Jesus, I thought this wouldn't hit me till I was like in my 70s. But I want to dissect that a little bit. Like, just talk a little bit about some of the other things you're experiencing, because we don't. It's not just veterans that listen to this podcast, but we do try and advocate for veterans and try and be a voice for them. But there's a lot of folks out there who experience this kind of thing, who childhood trauma, things like that come back and resurface and it shows its ugly head in a variety of ways. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about things like, you talked about tremors, you talked about not being able to concentrate and things like that. Is there anything else that jumps out? You go, boy, I never thought this would be associated with PTSD.
Yeah, I'll tell you, one is sleep. I haven't slept normally in, I don't know, 15 years, and it wasn't, and for me, it was a little difficult because, when I talk to other people who like can't sleep, or I'd go to to doctors to talk about my sleep, they're like, well, how long does it take you to go to sleep? And I'm like, I don't know, like 5 seconds. I'm out as soon as my head hits the pillow. But the problem is that when I would go to sleep, I was still hyper vigilant. And so everything would wake me up, and I could set the room to be, get that perfect sleep, have some brown noise in the background, all the lights are off, there's no blue lights, everything's good. And then like a cat will meow, outside a block away, and I would wake up.
Yeah, you're
And
like Dracula. You're like, "Blah!"
yeah, and so I would just pop up, and then there was a time like I saw 3 a.m. for like a year straight. I would just wake up sometime around 3 a.m. I just didn't like being asleep. I just felt, all the doors are locked in my house. My gun's in a shelf that I know where it's at. I'm just like prepared for everything, and so it just got to where I wasn't sleeping, and that led to the concentration.
So let me break that down just for a second, because I think for so many that are military or just guys are like, oh, like I protect my family, and you're like, there's an you said I was hyper vigilant. Other people would go, oh, like I'm just a really aware, and you go, no, brother, there's a line between being like aware and being protective, and to the point where it consumes you and you're giving up like your emotional and physical well-being, like you're giving up sleep because like you said, a cat meows and I jump out of bed, ready to attack the defender or the intruder coming in. And I think there's an interesting piece that somebody go, wait a minute, that's a sign or a symptom of PTSD,
Yeah, I'll
or it
tell
could
you.
be.
Yeah, it definitely could be. Some people are like that. Some people are naturally light sleepers. For me, it was, I was, if I heard a noise, I would wake up with my family asleep, and like I would go and clear the house. Like I couldn't go back to the bed until I inspected every room. And so I'm in this like top corner of my house, and I'm going all the way through it, down the stairs, checking the basement too. Like I was just like, I heard something. I need to make
Mm.
sure things locked. What was really strange is, that I went to the doctor and they did a sleep study, and that's what like sealed the deal. They were like, you don't fall asleep. Like most people have this kind of sine wave of sleep. Mine would go straight and then dip down real quick, and as soon as I was asleep, my body would just tell itself no, and I would come out. And so like where everyone else has this like sign, I have this like line that goes straight across and then just has like real quick dips every now and then. And they're like, yeah, dude, you're classic. Like
Yeah.
you show everything that is hyper vigilant.
Yeah, your eyes are closed, but you're actually only getting about 8 minutes of sleep for in like a 9 hour period.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it was. And,
Yeah.
I went from being the type of person who would beat my alarm up, like if it was set for 6 a.m. at 4:50, at 5:55, I would wake up and just be like, bing, I'm going to go. And then, 17, 18 years in, and my alarm's going off and I'm hitting the snooze button. I'm just like, no, I didn't get any sleep. So obviously that's no bueno, right? You can't be showing up late to the military and things like that. Um, uh, so I went through a whole bunch of different treatments and medicines to try to get me to sleep, and they got me to sleep. But then the problem was I was like a zombie all day, and that wasn't any better. I was just like, okay, that's cool. I'd rather just not sleep. So I just had to start making changes to my lifestyle to understand how to cope with that, and really, bring in mindfulness techniques, uh, the drawing, helping me if I have something that's on my mind. Sometimes I'll just draw it, get it out, and even if I don't keep the drawing, at least I just, you know, had something to say that was maybe just to myself and got it out, and then I can just hit the trash button and it's gone.
So I want to talk a little bit more about that. I think the art therapy and where we find what we find cathartic, right? What it is that, and thank God for modern science, and it's continued to tear down those barriers of what wasn't macho, like I'm a manly man. I'm not gonna paint whatever, like watercolors. And we find out like actually you do need that. You do need that outlet, and I want to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but. I want to go back and just talk about, because I think your story with Daniel is an interesting piece of how we finally get to you coming to maximize that the opportunities to like discover, like, man, I'm as messed up as everybody else out there, but I've been blessed with an opportunity to recognize it and to start to put the fixes in place to help me get through it. So Take us a little bit about, and we don't have to go into it any further than you want to, but about Daniel. You started going through some PTSD therapy. You're like, man, I'm on a good track. I'm making progress. You're letting Daniel, battle buddy for 10 years, you're letting him know about this. Um, kind of just walk us through like a little bit about the story about leading up to it, if there was signs or symptoms, or if again, I'm just trying to wonder if there was something that somebody else can learn from this. Go, man, Zack is on this path of getting better, and his battle buddy's tied to his hip, knows this, and yet maybe Daniel had some signs or symptoms that he didn't even recognize in himself, and I wonder if there's any kind of lessons you share there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's a complex situation, right? And I
Sure.
think it is with everyone. But in the military, there's a lot of fears that come just from doing your job, right? No one wants to be pulled out of the job, right?
Yeah.
And we had we had a TS clearance, so everyone's always worried about, oh, if I am diagnosed with PTSD, I'll lose my clearance, which I've seen not the case.
Yeah.
You that wouldn't be the issue, right? Even as I'm out, I'm everyone can see that I have PTSD, right? I write books about it. I write, I have a whole charity organization, and then so I'm pretty upfront and open. And I've gone through an investigation, and that has not caused me any issues. But I think that for a while, it kind of gets in your head, like I've got to be the best. I've got this clearance. I've done all these things in my life, but I don't want to admit it, and that's why I think, to my detriment, maybe a little bit before I got out, I was very open about, like, this is what I'm going through. Some people didn't like that. Some people, when I talked to Dan and said, hey, maybe you should kind of look at treatment or just getting out, come with me, get out. They were like, oh, you're kind of being, like you're trying to lead people away from the Army. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to lead this guy away from the Army because he needs a break,
Yeah.
And he was the type of cat, God, he deployed every Christmas, you know what I mean? Just so that the people that had families, he's like, I don't have kids. I don't want, there's no reason that I should be home, so he was always there, if anybody, he was always there to volunteer, like, oh, my kid's got, something coming up. Could you take it during, oh yeah, I just got back, but I'll go again.
Wow.
That's just how he was. And,
but it takes a toll.
Yeah, I think it does take a toll. I think it definitely, again, you're hyper vigilant. So when you do come home, if you've been on the road for if you've been deployed 200 days out of the year, and then you come home, and then you're home for 3-6 months, and then again you go back out, your body starts to forget that you can take a break.
Yeah.
And
it's like a light switch. You never actually turn it off. You just dim, right? You just dim it.
Yeah. And so I think, drinking started to become an issue, which is very hard to I think in the military to point out. I think that not that the military has a drinking culture, but we're it's men who are, like you said, manly men, and of course we drink. So to say somebody is drinking more than somebody else is kind of like, well, maybe tonight, but I think we definitely started to notice, and we talked, we talked about it. We talked about just that the overwhelming feeling of sadness and hopelessness, I think, and that was really what drove me to try to get him into doing the same thing, finding some way to get out of that kind of negative feedback loop.
When you're experiencing that kind of thing, like the sadness and hopelessness, is it something you recognize, or is it something somebody else has to point out to you? Like, if you're feeling hopeless, for you, when you're experiencing this, do you go, man, I'm feeling hopeless, or is it just so pervasive in you that you don't even recognize it until somebody says, hey man, there is hope?
Yeah, for the longest time I didn't notice it, or like the same thing, bouts of anger and frustration, and I wouldn't know why it is, and self-doubt. I couldn't get it today I'm a little different. Today, I think through practicing mindfulness and grounding myself a lot, I will wake up and I will feel that wave coming, that kind of undertow. And I'm just like, and so what's cool about that is that I'm able to talk with my kids and my wife and say, hey, like, I'm having a bad day. I don't need you to reassure me or anything, but just if I'm on edge or if I'm, if I snap or something today, snap back at you because you're playing too loud or whatever, just like, it's one of those days. So let's just be aware of it. But before it wasn't. I mean, my kid would, I think he was 4 years old at the time, 4 to 5 years old, and he would scream when he was playing, but it sounded like incoming. And, that's a mortar blast is pretty much how I got all my concussions. So every time he would scream, I would just be like, shut the F up. I can't take this. And so then that was driving me really crazy. But now I think we're pretty good. Not always, sometimes, but there's times now where I'm able to recognize it and say, like, hey, I'm down today. We're going to wait this one out. Maybe we won't go, we don't like flood our schedule with things to do or maybe keep me away from crowds, things like that.
Yeah. Do you think the military's gotten better about removing that stigma that comes with being vulnerable or acknowledging that, hey, we've been at war for 20 years? Spoiler alert, some of us are going to have, emotional and mental issues. You think the military's gotten better about taking that stigma away?
I think they're trying. I think they're trying to take it away. I'll tell you, I had a friend who was, he was my first sergeant at the time, but later he was a sergeant major, and he retired, and he started noticing effects of PTSD. And when we talked about it, he was like, man, I was the first person to make jokes when, suicide awareness training or I remember is 2006 when we came back from like a 15-month deployment, maybe 2007 by that time. And they had like Terry Bradshaw. They had like a video of him talking about, PTSD and brain and TBI and stuff like that. And for me at the time, I was like, who the hell is this guy? Like, I know who Terry Bradshaw is, but like, I'm not going to relate to that, and that was just me internally. So now I look back like, oh, well, clearly he had something to say, right? Like, these dudes are getting bashed in the brain all the time, and so I think that's hard. I think like it really is a cultural shift of not only, I think the military can kind of, they help and they play, but some, mental health is a wild ride, and it is hard for people to see that scar as opposed to, some cat with a missing arm or whatever it is. And the effects of it are basically you're a dirtbag, right? Like all the things you think of in the military as somebody who's not a good soldier, that's kind of the effects. The malaise, which looks like laziness, non-concentrating, which looks like, incompetence, or and so it's very hard for people to like kind of key in. But I think that trigger being, that dude was probably at the top 90% and he was crushing it, and then all of a sudden he's not. Maybe we need to look into that more than he's just mad at the Army or mad at the unit or something like that. I think that's
an interesting point, right? I mean, really, what a fascinating just a snippet there to say there are things that we because we're expecting high performers, and then when somebody doesn't, we don't give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe there's something else going on, and we default to, like you said, malaise. We default to laziness or or whatever it is, apathy, or he's lost that drive, and it's never, well, the conditions that he has experienced have caused that. And as you said, right, it's so internal, emotional health and mental well-being. It's not, well, he got shot. We can see the detriment of it. It's that internal thing, and I like to think that the military is getting better. There was a buddy of mine did an interview with his podcast with a 3 or 4 star general guy named last name Martin. And this guy, he wrote a book, but he tells a fascinating story about how General Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, came to him one day and said, you're doing a great job, but everybody thinks you've lost your mind. I need your resignation on my desk by the end of the day. And he's like, that was a wake up call. He's like, I was a whatever he was, 2 or 3 star general. He's like, and I just got fired. I got shit canned from this, this very, high level job. He's like, and that was a wake up call. And I had to, and so when you hear like a 3 or 4 star general talk about, recognizing that he had made it through 32 years of an Army career, only to realize at the end, like, hey, your emotional, mental well-being, nobody had the balls or whatever, just a chutzpah to tell you, or maybe nobody recognized it for what it was. And now he's a huge advocate for folks saying, hey, I made it through this great career, but probably 20 years in, I should have recognized the signs. And I hope that guys like you, guys like this guy are starting to tear down that stigma that where one, we recognize that it's a real thing. And after 20 years of being in war and combat, that we should expect it. But two, that it's okay to admit it and more so even be proactive about looking for it.
Yeah, you hit on something that I think is kind of detrimental detrimental to the whole thing. And that is, he was at 33 years and he recognized it, whereas he could have been at 20. And I think that gap, that space is a huge thing because if someone they get shot, you see blood instantly.
Yeah.
When you get, if you take a concussion or and you have TBI or PTSD, it may not be right away. It might be, you might be able to push through it for so long and you don't know you're pushing through it. And so it always takes 5 or 6 years, or not always, but they can.
Yeah.
And so now when it's happening, they're like, well, nothing's happened to you in like the last year or two. What do you mean something's wrong? I think that was a big one. I got that question a lot, was like, how this just came on all of a sudden. I'm like, yeah, kind of. For me, it came on all of a sudden.
Dude, you're really, writing a desk job. You got deployed in 2 years. What do you mean?
Yeah. So for everybody, I think that was like the main question that I got a lot that really like, because I think 2006 was the last time I had like a huge concussion, like I was hit by a mortar, and and then here it is 2017 and I'm slipping and they're like, I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's because of that mortar. And they're like, that was 10 years ago. How did that, how is that affecting you now? And it's like, it's not, it always has been. Just, I don't lose my temper at work the way I lose my temper at home. I don't show you guys when I'm struggling. I get home and then that's when I show everybody I'm struggling, because you don't want to show your soldiers that you're weak or that you've got to be the example for them. And so
there's a hidden message in there. What you just said is, I can bottle it up, but it's going to come out. Now, that's the hidden message, right? Is that I can turn it. People say, "Oh, I can turn it off." There's my work me and my family me, and you're like I have all this stress at work, but I turn it off. And what that hidden message and what you're saying is, no, you can't. Like, it's going to come out, and that's right. And I'm not some psychologist, but that's what they all say, right? Is that you can only bottle it up for so long, and somewhere in some form it's coming out, whether that's through your drinking or your third divorce, and you can't figure out what the common denominator is in all your divorces. You're like, I just keep marrying the wrong person.
Yeah.
Maybe you keep pushing them away because at home you just can't bottle it up. It's going to come out, like that stress and that the fear, the anxiety, all of those, that emotional knot that's going on inside of you, it has to release at some point. I think that's it. And I don't want to put words, maybe I'm wrong. Is that essentially what the subtext of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's definitely it. I mean, like, you're trained to kind of push things down, right? I think just as men, we're trained to push things down. My wife gets mad because I say like, "Oh, I'm just going to push that deep down inside where ulcers grow, and just let that come up later." And she's like,
"Oh, I know, it'll come back."
So, yeah, I think that's it. Like, you may be really good at your tactical skills. You're able to keep those because that's that thing that you're always pushing. But with that, like, the soft skills start to go away, to include like your personality and being able. So it's crazy because it's not it's not like, I think like the way we started, what's the difference between getting old and these symptoms? And it's just like, they're greater. You're getting old. You join the military at 18, 5 years later, you're 32. Like, it just doesn't work that way. Your body ages a lot quicker than it's supposed to.
So I want to actually, that's probably a good point to fast forward a little bit. Um, so Daniel, his passing catches you off guard. You're already in starting to deal with some PTSD therapy. Did to help you deal with your, what your closest battle buddy and his unexpected suicide. Was there something you changed about your therapy, or was it your therapy that helped you get through it? And kind of just talk about it, because I want to get into this. I want to get into the comic and the art and what you have been able to gain from that. But just take us through kind of, so Daniel, you get a call that Daniel has unfortunately taken his life, and then talk us through a little bit, like, had you already planted the seeds to help you deal with this?
Yeah, I had already been going to therapy, and I'd already went to NICO also. So I'd already, found art therapy, I found music therapy, found mindfulness. I'd already, and then also the science part of it, right? I had started, antidepressants. I quit drinking, except for the night that Dan died. But after that, that was like that. I just stopped drinking.
Mm.
I remember, shortly after that, we had, I'd met with all his friends, or I guess it was the memorial, and then we hung out with the friends, and I just drank iced tea the whole night, and everyone was just like, holy, wow, this is not normal. But I was just like, there's no way that I can be this low and then add alcohol to it and be okay. Right. So the drawing started getting really heavy. At the same time, I had talked with his mom about starting a nonprofit in his name, and that was kind of it. Like, I kind of clung to that, is that I need hope, and I can see how his death is affecting me and all the people around me, and I can't let myself kind of go down that path and affect everybody else. So I've got to start doing things that give something back, give that hope back in there, show people that there's things that we can do. And so between the two of those things, my wife was just like, yeah, you're so engrossed in that stuff, like, I want to tell you to stop because you're forgetting about the family, but you know what I mean, but I don't want to tell you to stop. So I had to learn a balancing between work, family, and then wanting to do this charity and therapy stuff. So it was definitely a growing experience.
Is there a guilt, and there's a little bit of a personal question, because I think I experienced a little bit of that as well. Is there a guilt between, like, saying, hey, family, I need to spend time with you because it's good for me, but I also need to deal with myself. I can't be good to you if I'm not good to myself. But then there's that push pull, and I think, like, my wife always talks about the mom guilt. She needs her time away from the kids, but then she feels guilty being away from the kids, and then she comes back with the kids, and then all three of our kids are like up in her hair. She's like pulling her hair out. She's like, I need to get away. So there's that constant push pull, and I think I feel a little bit of that same. Is there something that when you're like, I know I need to be with you, but I also need, I'm no good with you if I'm back in a bad spot.
Yeah, it's difficult, and I think that that's one of the things that kept me from pushing through with like my sort of therapy, because my therapy, I'm a comic guy, so I'm going to say it involves the fortress of solitude, right? Like, I want that Superman.
It's okay, nerd. It's okay.
Yeah, so I want that Superman safe space, and for me, um, uh, being in a room where no one talks to me for 2 to 3 hours and there's just nothing to really, that's heaven for me. Like, I could be on the beach, in the forest, in a room. I just don't like talking. I need a break when I'm at that point. And so that's really difficult to be like, hey, you guys are all having fun, and everybody, this is a great thing. It's driving me nuts. So I'm gonna go mope in a room. It's not moping, but my kids are learning that they also kind of like it too, though. When we get into like really crowded, people are loud and they can't. They're like, oh, this is kind of a little out of control. I don't like loud. I'm like, well, let's go sit and not talk. And so um, I think it's akin to that old like throwing the baseball in the backyard with your son. You really don't say much, but you're there with each other. You're absorbing each other. You're creating a bond. That's how it is with me, both with my family and myself. I like to just absorb and not have to need words to keep everything going or watch TV. I loathe TV. I'm so tired of it, especially during COVID.
Oh yeah. So let's talk then about that art therapy and the music therapy. Like what is it? What is art therapy? What is music therapy? And how has it impacted you then?
I think the best way to describe art therapy is the way Nico does it, right? When you're there,
And I'm sorry, just for everybody else, NICO is was it
the
National?
National Intrepid Center of Excellence. So,
Is that at Bethesda Naval Hospital? Is that right?
Yep, that's a
Okay.
Walter Reed Bethesda. It's like right when you drive in across from the main hospital. Uh, it's pretty hard to miss, but almost nobody goes in there because it's that special offshoot. So you kind of hardly know it's there. Um, but the way, it's about taking whatever you're feeling and getting it out. So what's kind of cool is they do a mask project, and you start with this like cardboard faceless mask, and you get to just design it however you want. They have like all kinds of crazy tools. They have like wood etching tools. They have some clay, all the stuff. You can do whatever you want. And it's crazy because there's hundreds of masks in there. They all started with, a brown faceless mask that all look the same. But then you go in there and you see 150 different ways that people have taken their PTSD or TBI or whatever it is and
Yeah.
explained how it affects them. And what I find astonishing about that is the diversity, because everyone always thinks, oh, it's PTSD is flashbacks and
Right.
and bombs raining and Kermit the Frog looking out into the direction of nowhere. I always think of that meme when I think about it. But then you see just like feelings of guilt, not being good enough, feelings of failure, even though you're still on the top 10% of the military. You just feel like you failed something. And then you have
Yeah.
like mine was like a human with a robot under it, kind of Terminator looking, I guess, just because I felt like that robot was always taking control. Like if I could just shut it off, let that dude take over, then I was good. And then that kind of started to just like take its toll and turn into like a little Frankenstein monster, where it's just you're piecing yourself back together and trying to continue to be this robot who executes everything the military wants, who is there for his family, who's doing all of these things that are a protocol of what a man's supposed to be. But every time a piece falls off, so there's skin patched on mine, and it was a crazy looking thing. But it's cool because those masks make their rounds. They go to the National Museum of Science and Medicine. They go to the vice president's house, and it brings a lot of awareness.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's actually soldiers who have done it, which is what leads me to the comic. If somebody's going to tell this story, it might as well be a soldier.
So let's talk a little about your comic. Well, first of all, I think we could just talk just about the masks alone. I think I've never heard of this before. I think it's like I imagine that not only is it therapeutic to have created it, but it's therapy in creating it. Like you're actually starting to create a visual representation and it's an ability for you to say, hey man, these are my inadequacies, or inadequacies probably isn't the right term because there's a stigma that comes with it, right? This is who I am. These are the parts that I'm proud of and the parts that that maybe I'm not as proud of because I believe I was supposed to be better, and these are the parts that, and I suspect that in the process of creating it and just hearing your story about the robot and pieces patching back off and it not functioning like you want to, I imagine there's it's both therapeutic and having the finished product, but also in just creating it and thinking about who am I under, is below the surface.
Yeah, I think reflecting back on it, because sometimes I just get so engrossed in what I'm doing. Maybe I'm not getting that therapeutic thing because I want to get
Yeah.
that proper skin tone, right? Which,
Yeah.
it takes time to meet in different colors and everything. And then when I'm done, I was looking at it and I was kind of like, holy crap, I do feel that way. Like, I
Wow.
didn't know I felt that way. It was just something and so I think that's music therapy, art therapy. Sometimes you're just drawing, you're writing, you're playing the guitar, whatever. And it connects you with that feeling. Like, you didn't know that was specifically the feeling. It's like with my wife. I'm like, I understand you're mad. She's like, I'm not mad, I'm upset. And I'm like, I don't know the difference between those two things. To me, that's all the same. And she's like, no, I'm upset. That means that, like, I feel this disappointment and mad would just be me being mad. And I'm like, holy crap. And while that seems crazy at first, that's what it was. Like, I feel sad. Okay, I guess that doesn't encapsulate, like, I feel like this robot who's pushing through and and then is failing and doing all
Yeah.
these things. So it was like it's providing almost like a physical definition. So yeah, I'm not mad. I'm upset. Like, I'm not depressed. I feel broken. I feel all these different things that can be summed up in the whole picture is 1,000 words.
Wow, man, that's powerful. Yeah. Again, we could just talk all day about this. As I think I would love to hear about the masks, but in the interest of time, I want to get to the comic and talk a little bit about Daniel's foundation as well. But so tell me, so art therapy um, and Daniel's story kind of come together, and you get the idea for a comic.
Yeah. So I have the hard copy, but I also we kind of practiced this earlier. Um, I can share some images for the podcast if you want me
Yeah,
to.
please. I can
So
see it up over your shoulder there as well, right? That's the first book sequel, the sequel that came out.
yeah, that's the first one. I kept that. So let's see if so this is kind of my pain, but um, so do you have the cover right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the cover. That was pretty much the first image I drew. Um, I wasn't expecting it to be the cover, but I was just drawing. I just wanted to have something because we had so few pictures of Dan that whatever I could find, I wanted to kind of to capture, and then that ended up being the picture. Uh, so then, obviously, I dedicated it to him.
And that's your drawing.
Yep.
Wow. So that's the uh that's the artwork that goes with it. But you wanted to tell the story in a comic book form and kind of get Daniel's story out there. Was that the genesis for the
Yeah,
comic book itself?
I mean, it's not completely Dan's story to say. I guess it's a little bit of mine and how I process the story.
Hmm.
And it really came from kind of the tragedy of his suicide note. Um, and that's actually in there. But the just is that, your life's a book and you have to, read every page and enjoy it. And he said, unfortunately for me, my book is over, has ended. And that's kind
Wow.
of where I got the title. Was it's the sequel, right? It's how am I going to keep his memory moving on? What are we going to do to 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 keep him kind of to make him as a figure that we can remember and that we can help others uh move on and hopefully help others with PTSD and TBI. And then now through the loss of his life, hopefully we're saving many more.
Wow, that's power. There's a lot of power in that, both in his statement saying my book has come to a close. Wow, that's reading that. Again, we can dig into that deeper, but reading that, you go, wow, somebody's in a very dark place when they can actually, when they can write that they recognize that the book is closing, right? Um, but in from out of the ashes of that travesty, or that tragedy, I think it's one is kudos to you for taking that and channeling into something positive that, as you said, hopefully from the loss of one, we can save others, and we'll never know that how many lives were saved by somebody reading that or just hearing your story, which is a good opportunity for us to talk a little bit about the MDL Foundation. You mentioned earlier that you and Dan's mom said you wanted to do something in his memory. So tell us a little about the MDL Foundation and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so this is it's wicked awesome and it's fun. So
Any foundation that's described as wicked awesome is already it's already one we want to dig into.
I feel we're far enough north that we can say wicked awesome. uh, it wasn't so much. I guess this is how it was for me. Group therapy and traditional therapy, that it doesn't sit well with a lot of soldiers. Even mindfulness, sometimes it just feels too hippie kind of, and
Yeah.
so I think about how I usually share my feelings, and usually when you talk, you're around a car building. That's kind of how when I grew up, we're sitting, cracking open a beer, working on, I don't know, changing headers in for some, changing some headers in, and you just start talking about what's going on, and it doesn't have to feel like you're, opening up or feeling yourself on some dimension or anything crazy like that. It's just, uh, we're working on a car, and someone says, the VA, I can't get my VA stuff done. And so hopefully that kind of comes up during that time, and I can go, I know exactly who to go to help you with this. So that's kind of the genesis of how we thought we would create the Master Sergeant Daniel Lovell Foundation. Was, let's put some cars together. What it'll end up doing is creating like a squad-like therapy session where a group of people that you can trust and support and have gone through the same things are sitting, instead of around a table or in a circle, they're sitting around an engine, and we're going to build a car. So there's a couple different programs. One that we're doing right now is the 24 Hours of Le Mans car. So that's an offshoot of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, where you take a piece of crap car that can't cost more than $500 and you try to race it for 24 hours. And like the winner gets $200 in nickels. Like, it's not the winning isn't the fun part.
It's
the fun
purely
part.
bragging rights.
Yeah. So we have an MGB right now. And the first meet we had with that car, those cats ripped it apart in no time flat. I went to go to get I think like an air filter from the store, came back, and that car was on the cinder blocks. I mean, it was like they were robbing it. They just stripped it down so quickly. So the next thing is we have to learn some British engineering and figure out how the carburetors work on that, and get it back started. But the cool thing is it's all veterans, right? They're all working on it. Then we'll go out to a show, and then we get to we get to take their project that they've been working on, and we get to showcase that in front of people, right? And then we do our laps and raise money, bring awareness to PTSD, soldier suicide, TBI, things like that. And they get to go out and have a good time. So it's therapy, it's quality of life, it's raising awareness, all of that wrapped into one program. And then we also do like classic cars. So we're working on, actually the first one is Dan's old truck. We're restoring that. It's a 57 GMC truck. So right now it's getting painted, and then we're going to take that to shows and show it off, and try to raise more money for the foundation so we can do more races and have more cats involved. And everything that I've seen, the best thing about all of these nonprofits of getting people together, whether it's been through hockey, music, is people start talking. And when they start talking, you can figure out maybe how you can help them the best. So, like I said, they need help with VA, or, hey, I keep getting upset at my this all the time. What do I do? Or finding them the other, I love to play hockey. Oh, you do? Well, I can find a place that will give you, all your pads and all your gear, and then every night you get free skate time. Oh, well, that's great. So then that's kind of the benefit that's the only benefit I feel I bring to it, is that I know a lot of people, and I can point them in the right direction. If you need low to low cost therapy, Headstrong's out there and all these different programs. So I just feel like I'm a directory of you got a problem. Let's see where we can find somebody to help you with it.
That's awesome, man. Well, this is Military Appreciation Month, so it's probably very appropriate that we wrap up with that exact same that message, because, brother, I'll tell you, man, just what you just said is, I don't know how I can help guys, but I know what worked for me is just talking through. And sometimes guys come and they go, I don't know what my problem is. I don't know. I want to come work on the car. And then through the process of just not deliberate, but just socialization and opening the conversation, we start to discover where we can help. Not only can I give back, or you or somebody else give back, but we start to have a little bit of an opportunity to self-reflect. And I don't know if I can think of a better purpose for an organization than helping somebody understand where maybe they don't even know they need help, and doing it in such a fun environment, giving guys an opportunity to work on a $500 car that they have to race for 24 hours on. And this is the 24 Hours Lemons is they actually race these on legit, like NASCAR, Formula One tracks, right?
Yeah, so it depends. They're at different places. Some are on some legit paved roads. Some are just like improved roads. But yeah, they're just circles for 24 hours. Kind of insane. Trying
to keep these things running. And again, if veterans do, or anybody, right? If we do nothing well, it's enjoy the challenge, and if through the process of that we have an opportunity to do a little self-discovery and find opportunities to help others, but also get some help, man. I don't know if we can ask for anything more than that. That's very cool. Where can folks find what you're doing? Find the comic, or find about Dan's foundation? Where can they find him on the interweb?
Yeah, the foundation site is mdlfoundation.org. And then
That's comic, Master Sergeant Daniel Lovell Foundation, mdlfoundation.org, right?
Yeah, MDL Foundation is the abbreviated way for the Master Sergeant Daniel Lovell Foundation. You can look on the merch page, and I have the comic on there. So that seemed the easiest way to tie the two together, and then all the proceeds go straight to the foundation. So you can check it out there. There's also digital copies on Kindle. I sent you guys a link, but that link is way too long for me to recite. So if you go on Amazon and search the sequel and then my name, Zack Colbert, or Zack Colbert, if you want to pretend that I'm fancy, it'll take you right there, and you can download that. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free.
Oh, no way. All right. Free on Kindle.
Well, Kindle Unlimited. They're like unlimited.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, all right. Hey, Zack Colbert. We'll give it a little French. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it makes it sound fancy, like going to Target. Hey, man, thanks for sharing your story with us, and thanks for what you're doing for veterans, man, especially here in Military Appreciation Month, brother. We appreciate what you're doing to help other vets, and we appreciate the opportunity to share your story about what you guys are doing.
No problem. Thanks for giving me an hour to gab.
Of course. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Greencastle Podcast. Please be sure to give us a like, a thumbs up, a share. You can find us at greencastleconsulting.com/podcast, or on all the major podcast channels and the social media channels, including our YouTube channel. Thanks very much. We'll see you on the next episode.